My mother spent 14 consecutive days on her hands and knees, hand-painting a woodland mural across the walls of my sister's nursery. She arrived at Jessica's house every morning at 8 o'clock, carrying specialized detail brushes, rolls of blue masking tape, and custom mixed pastel paints. She complained about her arthritis aching in the damp spring weather, yet she pushed through the joint pain to paint intricate birch tree leaves, sleeping foxes, and tiny sparrows near the ceiling. I visited them on the 12th day to drop off some maternity clothes and found my mom perched on a metal stepladder, her fingers cramped around a fine-tipped brush, humming a lullaby as she shaded a deer fawn. She dedicated 80 hours of intense physical labor to ensure Jessica's unborn child had a picturesque room. 1 month after she finished that elaborate project, I asked her for a single favor. My husband Greg was stationed on a remote offshore drilling rig for a 6-week rotation, leaving me as the sole caregiver for our 3-year-old son Lucas. I had spent the previous 2 years working brutal contract jobs to help my husband keep our household afloat while applying for permanent roles in corporate finance. Meridian Trust invited me for a final round panel interview for a director position. I scheduled the interview weeks in advance and asked my mother, Diane, to watch Lucas for 2 hours on a Tuesday morning. I did not ask her to entertain him with complex activities. I prepared his snacks, cued his favorite animated movies on the television, and laid out his toys in the living room. All she had to do was sit on my sofa and ensure he remained safe while I drove downtown for my final interview in a career-defining job. She agreed without hesitation, promising to arrive at 8 in the morning. At 7:45 on the morning of the interview, I stood in my kitchen wearing a press suit, holding a printed stack of my financial models, watching the clock tick toward her arrival time. My phone vibrated on the counter. I answered the call, expecting my mother to tell me she was pulling into the driveway. Instead, her voice came through the speaker, lacking any trace of urgency or apology. "Valerie, I am going to stay home today," she stated. "Yesterday, Jessica wanted me to come over early to help her sort through the baby shower gifts, and we were up late organizing the closets. I am just feeling a bit too drained this morning. You should understand. Just take Lucas with you or reschedule." I stared at the wall, the silence stretching over the cellular connection. Rescheduling a final round panel interview with 3 senior banking executives was an impossibility. Taking a toddler into a corporate boardroom was professional suicide. I reminded her of the stakes, explaining that this job offered the health insurance and stability my family desperately needed. "Mom, the interview is in 1 hour. I have no backup childcare. You promised you would be here." She sighed, projecting irritation at my pushback. "Do not use that tone with me, Valerie. You are always so independent, you will figure it out. I need to rest my back." She ended the call. I lowered the phone, the reality of her priorities crystallizing in my mind. She endured 2 weeks of physical agony to paint a decorative wall for Jessica, but sitting on a comfortable couch for 2 hours to help me secure my family's future was an unreasonable burden. I did not waste time crying or arguing. I picked up my laptop bag, grabbed Lucas, and strapped him into his car seat. I spent the next 20 minutes calling every emergency drop-in corporate daycare facility within a 10-mile radius of the downtown financial district. I found one center with a single unexpected opening. They required a staggering $300 emergency registration fee, payable immediately. I handed over my credit card, ignoring the low balance warning I knew would follow, and dropped Lucas off in a room full of strange children. I sprinted 3 city blocks in heels, navigating crowded sidewalks and crosswalks, arriving at the Meridian Trust lobby with 4 minutes to spare. I walked into the restroom, used paper towels to blot the sweat from my forehead, regulated my breathing, and walked into the boardroom. I delivered a flawless presentation on retail lending risk mitigation. I answered every question the executives posed. I left the building, retrieved my son, drove home, and accepted the job offer 2 days later. I also made a quiet, definitive decision regarding my role in my mother's life. I stopped initiating contact. I stopped attending the elaborate Sunday dinners Mom hosted for Jessica. I stopped pretending we were an equal family. I focused my energy on my career, my son, and my husband. I never asked my mother for another favor, and she never offered one. 5 years passed. I utilized the director position at Meridian Trust as a stepping stone, working long hours, analyzing market trends, and restructuring default protocols. The executive board eventually promoted me to vice president of retail lending and mortgage default management. I oversaw a massive department responsible for handling distressed assets, negotiating repayment plans, and authorizing foreclosure proceedings when borrowers exhausted all available options. Greg transitioned to a local engineering firm, Lucas started 4th grade, and our lives moved forward with structured peace. During those same 5 years, My mother and Jessica engaged in a slow, documented financial spiral. Jessica gave birth, decided she disliked her corporate job, and convinced my mother to fund a boutique children's clothing store in a high-rent commercial district. Jessica possessed zero business acumen, relying on expensive inventory and lavish marketing campaigns that generated minimal revenue. To finance this vanity project, my mother utilized her greatest asset, her paid-off, 4-bedroom suburban home. She visited a Meridian Trust branch and originated a massive home equity line of credit, known as a HELOC. She maxed out the draw period within 2 years, handing the cash directly to Jessica. The boutique closed its doors a year later, leaving behind broken commercial leases and liquidated inventory. The structure of the HELOC dictates that once the draw period concludes, the loan enters the repayment phase, causing the minimum monthly obligation to quadruple as the principal becomes due. My mother lived on a fixed retirement pension. She lacked the monthly cash flow to cover the new, inflated mortgage payment. She missed her first payment in January. She missed the second in February. By April, the loan sat at 90 days past due, triggering the bank's automated acceleration clause. My department generates and mails the legal notices of intent to foreclose. The system operates on strict regulatory timelines, issuing certified letters to defaulting borrowers outlining their outstanding arrears and providing a final deadline to cure the default before the bank seizes the collateral. Every piece of correspondence, leaving the default management division, bears the signature and printed name of the vice president. My name. On a Tuesday afternoon, I sat in my office reviewing compliance audits when my personal cell phone illuminated on my desk. A text message from my mother appeared on the lock screen. 10 seconds later, 3 messages from Jessica arrived. The phone began vibrating continuously, the notifications stacking on top of each other with relentless speed. The device grew physically warm against my palm, as the messaging application struggled to process the influx of data. Within 5 minutes, I received 95 panicked, demanding, and frantic messages. I unlocked the screen and read the chronological descent into chaos. My mother sent the first text. "Valerie, I just opened a certified letter from Meridian Trust. They are threatening to take my house. Your name is at the bottom of this paper. Call me immediately and stop this." Jessica followed up. "Mom is having a panic attack. How could you send her a foreclosure notice? You are the vice president. Fix this right now." The messages escalated from shock to demands, invoking the concept of familial duty they discarded years ago. "Call your boss and wipe out this loan," Diane wrote. "Family helps family. I know you have the authority to delete this debt. Do not make me lose the house I raised you in." I read every single message, noting the absolute absence of accountability. My mother, Diane, borrowed the money. She signed the promissory note. She handed the funds to Jessica. She ignored the collection calls for 4 months. Yet, in their minds, I was the villain for allowing a bank to execute a standard legal contract, and I was the designated savior obligated to risk my career to erase their mistakes. Meridian Trust maintains a strict zero-tolerance conflict of interest policy. Any bank employee who discovers a familial relationship to a defaulting borrower must immediately recuse themselves from the file. Accessing a relative's financial records, altering loan terms, or attempting to intervene in the collection process constitutes gross misconduct, resulting in immediate termination and referral to federal banking regulators for potential criminal prosecution. Even if I harbored a desperate desire to save my mother's house, I possessed no legal mechanism to do so. More importantly, I harbored no such desire. I placed the phone in my desk drawer, locked the drawer with a small brass key, and returned my attention to the compliance audits on my monitors, ignoring the ringing device until my workday concluded. Diane and Jessica bypassed the ignored text messages and drove directly to the Meridian Trust regional headquarters the following morning. The security desk in the main lobby contacted my office extension, informing me that 2 women claiming to be my mother and sister were causing a disruption near the elevators, demanding a meeting with the vice president. I instructed the guards to issue them visitor badges and direct them to a standard glass-walled conference room on the 2nd floor, keeping them far away from the secure executive levels. I gathered a blank notepad, walked down the stairwell, and entered the conference room. My mother paced the carpeted floor, clutching the crumpled notice of intent to foreclose in her fist. Jessica sat at the table with her arms crossed, projecting an aura of defensive anger. My mother stopped pacing the moment the door clicked shut behind me. "You ignored my messages," she stated, her voice sharp and authoritative. "I want this letter voided. I want the debt dealt with. You sit in a massive corner office upstairs, Valerie. You run this department. Make this go away, or use your huge bonus to settle it. I pulled out a chair, sat opposite them, and placed my notepad on the table. I cannot alter your loan terms, Mom. I cannot forgive the debt, and I cannot stop the foreclosure process. You signed a legally binding contract pledging your property as collateral. You defaulted on the payments. The bank is exercising its legal right to recover the funds. Jessica slammed her hand flat against the table. You are the vice president. You can do whatever you want. Mom gave me that money to start a business. The business failed. She cannot afford the new payments. You make a massive salary, Valerie. If you will not delete the loan, then write a check and pay it off for her. Family helps family. I looked at Jessica, observing the entitlement radiating from her posture. I turned my gaze back to my mother. Meridian Trust conflict of interest policies prohibit me from accessing, viewing, or interacting with your financial file, I explained, keeping my tone level and professional. If I attempted to intervene in this foreclosure, the bank would terminate my employment and report me to the federal regulators. I will not destroy my career, lose my income, and risk federal charges to fix a financial disaster you created. My mother's face flushed red. She gripped the edge of the table. I am your mother. I raised you. You owe me this. I am an old woman, Valerie. You cannot let them throw me out on the street over a piece of paper. You have an obligation to protect your family. An obligation, I repeated, letting the word echo in the quiet room. I hate to remind you of this, Mom, but 5 years ago I asked you for 2 hours of your time. I asked you to sit on a couch and watch your grandson so I could secure the job that eventually led to this exact vice president title. You canceled 15 minutes before my interview because you were feeling a bit too drained from helping Jessica sort baby clothes. You told me to figure it out. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand, stopping her interruption. You spent 14 days on your hands and knees painting a mural for Jessica. You took out a massive loan against your home to fund her vanity business. You gave her everything, and you gave me nothing. You chose your priority decades ago. She stared at me, the color draining from her cheeks as the reality of my words dismantled her demands. Jessica looked away, unable to maintain eye contact. The foreclosure will proceed according to state law. I continued, standing up and retrieving my notepad. You have 90 days to sell the property on the open market, pay off the HELOC balance, and keep any remaining equity. If you fail to sell the house, the bank will auction it. I suggest you contact a real estate agent today. I turned toward the door. My mother's voice followed me, weak and trembling. Where am I supposed to live, Valerie? I paused with my hand on the doorknob. Jessica has a spare bedroom with a beautiful woodland mural painted on the walls. I suggest you stay there. I opened the door, walked out of the conference room, and returned to my office. Diane failed to sell the house within the 90-day window. Meridian Trust foreclosed on the property, auctioned it to a residential developer, and evicted her. She moved into Jessica's house, where their shared financial ruin fueled constant, bitter arguments. I remained in my position as vice president, raising my son in a quiet, stable home, entirely free from the burden of people who demand everything and offer nothing.